You know, we could all use some encouragement. And I've got some good news for you. Welcome to 5 Minutes with Mark. Well, greetings, friends, and welcome back to 5 Minutes with Mark. Glad you're here. We are in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 16, picking up at verse 9. Now, when he rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 demons. She went and told those who had been with him as they mourned and wept. And when they heard that he was alive and had been seen by her, they did not believe. After that, he appeared in another form to 2 of them as they walked and went into the country. And they went and told it to the rest, but they did not believe them either. Later, he appeared to the 11 as they sat at the table, and he rebuked their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they did not believe those who had seen him after he had risen. Let's stop right there. This is such an interesting little thing. First, we see that he appears to Mary Magdalene. Now, if you read the story in the Gospel of John, that's where you get that moment where she's there and she sees somebody she thinks is the gardener. She goes, "Where have you taken him?" The ladies who were there that morning were convinced someone had stolen his body. They've done something with him. You've moved him. Where'd you take him? Just tell me where you've taken him so that we can go and prepare him for burial. And he says, "Mary," and she recognizes him, Jesus. This great moment. That's in the Gospel of John. So we get a little more detail in the other gospel stories. But here, he appears first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 demons. This was an interesting woman. And she's the first one to see the risen Jesus. She runs back to the disciples. "I've seen him. He's alive." And they said, "Get out of here. We don't believe you." Then we have 2 that are walking through the country. Well, if you read the Gospel of Luke, you have the guys on the road to Emmaus where Jesus joins them and they walk, and they're saying, "Who are you? Don't you know what happened?" Jesus asked, "Why are you so sad?" He said, "Well, Jesus of Nazareth was crucified. They killed him. Don't you know?" And he begins opening up the scriptures to them, telling them why all these things had to happen. And then they get to where they're going to go, and they invite him in for dinner, and he breaks the bread, and then he disappears, and they realize, oh, that was Jesus. And they run back to Jerusalem and go and tell everybody, "We've seen him. He's alive. He's alive." And they said, "We don't believe you. We don't believe you." We always pick on Thomas, doubting Thomas, who said, I've got to put my finger in the holes in his wrist. Then I'll believe. They're really echoing the chief priests and the scribes who said, "Yeah, if you come down off the cross, then we'll believe. We've got to see it with our own eyes. We don't believe." And then they're sitting at the table, the 11 of them, and Jesus shows up. And it says, he rebuked their unbelief and hardness of heart. He said, "Guys, what did I tell you the whole time we were walking up to Jerusalem? I told you I would be betrayed into the hands of the sinners, that I would be executed, and that I would rise on the 3rd day. It's not a secret. I told you that. I told you that over and over and over again. I told you that so many times that you didn't want to hear it anymore. And then when it happens, you didn't believe it. What's wrong with you?" He rebuked them. I mean, they're all happy to see him. And the first thing he says is, "Oh, wait a minute, we got to get something. We got to clear the air. First thing we got to do, you got to understand. You got to believe." That's why Jesus says, we who believe, who've not seen, are more blessed than those who saw with their own eyes. I was not there. I did not see Jesus appear in the room, but I know he did. I didn't see Jesus appear to Mary Magdalene in the garden, but I know he did. I did not see Jesus walk with 2 unnamed disciples on the road to Emmaus, but I know he did. And you said, "Mark, how do you know he did?" Well, I know he did because I have experienced the presence of the risen Christ in my own life. Now, I didn't see him, not like I see my reflection in this computer. But he was there. He's there with me now. I have experienced his presence in very tangible ways many times. The most important one was the day when I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ. I'll never forget. It was not in a church. It wasn't out in the woods somewhere. It wasn't even in my home. It was in my office, 401 Windsor Street, downtown Atlanta. I walked in. I had been a very good religious person. I was very active in my church, but I felt very empty on the inside. I had begun studying everything I could to understand the resurrection, because that is the question. If the tomb was really empty, what do we do with that? What do I believe? And I read books, and I studied the evidence for the resurrection, because I knew that was the key. And I was miserable. And one of the things that I had promised myself was that I would never leave my family the way my dad left his. I would never do to any of my children what my dad did to me. And at that point in my life, I had 3 children, small ones, a wonderful wife. And I was getting very frustrated with my life and was very close on several accounts, several times, to just disappearing, running away, doing what I wanted to do, which was not do the hard work of parenting, being a good husband. I was so miserable. And I walked into my office that day, at the end of my rope. Now again, I'm counting the money at church. I'm singing in the choir. I'm teaching Sunday school. I'm in church. Big difference between church and redemption. And I sat at my desk. I turned out my light, locked my door, unplugged my phone. This was in 1993. And I just cried out. I said, Jesus, if you're real, I need to know it. And the presence of Christ was in that room. I heard his voice. I didn't hear an audible voice like coming through a loudspeaker, but it wasn't my voice. It was in my heart and my head. It's hard to explain, but I'm telling you, I heard the voice of Jesus Christ speak to me directly in response to my cry. And he asked me a question. He said, Mark, he knew who I was. He said, do you believe I am who I say I am? And again, I knew the answer to that question. I was going to church. I'd been in church as a kid all my life. I knew what to say, but I didn't know if I really believed it. And I took some time that morning, sitting in that dark office, with that question echoing in my mind and my heart. Do you believe I am who I say I am? And finally, after some period of time, I said, yes. Yes, I believe, Jesus, that you are the Son of God. I believe you died on a cross as payment for my rebellion. Yes, I believe you rose from the dead. I think the tomb is empty. I think you are alive. Yes, I believe it. I do believe it. I did believe it. It was a process. I believed it because I couldn't explain the empty tomb any other way. No other explanation makes sense except that he is alive as he claimed, as those eyewitnesses claim, as the scriptures claim, and as the transformed lives of millions of people across the last 2,000 years testifies. I believe it. And then he asked me a second question. He said, Mark, if you believe I am who I say I am, then why don't you trust me? And that was the moment in my life where I surrendered myself to Christ. Where I said, all right, I don't know why you want me, but if you want me, you've got me. I will trust you with my life. I will surrender. I will follow you. I will take up my cross. I will deny myself. I give up. I'm yours. And I walked out of that office a different person than the person who walked in. I had the proverbial 1,000-pound weight that lifted off of me. I felt a rush of warmth that flowed through my whole body. I felt a transformation from the inside out that happened, and my eyes were open, like scales fell off, just like Paul. And suddenly I could see myself in ways that I had never seen myself. I could see my life in ways I had never seen my life. I could see the world in ways I had never seen it before. I was given a new understanding, a new lens to see reality through. I was changed. In the moment, in a twinkling of an eye, I became different. And I didn't burn out on my religious experience. I didn't quit church and fall back into the world. I haven't been perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I still have struggles, but I am a man of deep faith, rough around the edges. Anybody who knows me can tell you that. But I know Jesus Christ rose from the dead. I know because he changed my life. I've never been the same, and that was 30 years ago. How about you? How is your unbelief? Do you believe that Jesus is alive? Have you surrendered yourself to him, or are you just playing church games? Have you experienced the transformation that comes from trusting him and surrendering your life to him? If you haven't, I encourage you, cry out to God. He's not hiding from you. See you next time. Hey friends, I'm so glad that you are enjoying this Bible study. And I hope that you'll like it and that you'll share it with others, either by word of mouth or forward the link that's here. Make sure we get the good news of Jesus out to as many people as we can, and hopefully this is a way that's engaging, entertaining, and encouraging along the way. It really is good news. And if you want to know more about me, check out my website, theeclecticmonk.com. See you soon.